Body-on-frame construction, solid axles, locking differentials, steel wheels. These are all pieces of technology that the off-road community values and admires. But it seems as time progresses, it becomes rarer and rarer to find new vehicles that incorporate these rather basic pieces of kit. Well, a new company, Ineos, has launched the Grenadier here in the US. This is one of the early retail customers has brought his in for us to take a look at, and we're going to see how it compares to some good tried and true iron with this Toyota Land Cruiser. This is an 80 series Toyota Land Cruiser, and it is arguably one of the best off-road vehicles ever made, period. I think there are people that would argue that, because it is not only a very capable machine out in the dirt, it is one of the longest lasting vehicles perhaps ever made. Toyota engineered these vehicles to last 250,000 miles before major failures. And there's plenty of Land Cruisers out there with over 1 million miles. They're found on every continent in the world. South America, throughout Africa. You can find them in Europe, in Asia, and just about everywhere where there's roads, you're gonna find an 80 series Land Cruiser. Now, obviously the Grenadier, from a visual standpoint, has more in common with a Defender, right? There's just no getting around that. But I wanted to bring the 80 series out because it is such a benchmark for capability and for reliability and longevity and all these things that the 4x4 community looks for. Now we're gonna go up the trenches course here, which are these divots cut into the earth at various angles. And we're gonna go into low range. It's just an old-fashioned lever. You pull it back into low range, and now that's engaged. And there's not a lot else I can do. Now, it's got solid axles, and what solid axles mean in a vehicle is the left and the right wheels are interconnected, and it also provides the best possible grip over rough terrain, kind of like a seesaw. When one wheel goes up, the other goes down, which is exactly what is happening right now. So the wheels are falling into the holes, but the body is remaining perfectly level. That is just amazing. Look at that. These are deep holes, and the vehicle has not lost contact with the earth until right here. So what I can do now is well, not much. I have my center differential lock engaged. Yep, that's engaged when you go into low range. And on some Land Cruisers of the 80 series generation, you could spec them with front and rear locking diffs, which mechanically locks the left and the front rear wheel at the same speed. But this Land Cruiser doesn't have that because we didn't want to spend more than a mortgage to try to find one. So you can use a brake to kind of fake it, which is what I'm doing now. But what I think we're going to have to do is use a little bit of momentum to get through this last hole. So we're going to back it down gently. We'll lock it into first gear. Nice constant momentum. There you go. The vehicle hopped through the holes. So look, those solid axles do such a phenomenal job of maintaining the wheels in contact with the rough surface that you know, lockers are still needed for sure, or limited slip, or some traction control setup. It's not something you really want to, you know, supplement with large tires in an ideal world, but you can get through some impressive stuff even without lockers on these older vehicles. Now we're going up our rocks course here, and when we talk about the rock course, right, we're looking at ground clearance, approach angle, departure angle, all of it. The Land Cruiser has all of it, and it has a little bit extra because this one has a slight lift on it and some larger tires. And we also want a nice smooth power delivery. So low range, we've got this silky smooth, naturally aspirated straight six, which is allowing me to not spin tires, not drive in a jerky manner, just drive in a way that allows this Land Cruiser to walk up that rock section like it wasn't even there. And that's also key, right? You don't want an engine that's got this kind of laggy turbo or is trying to fight you on your way up things. And certainly the Toyota doesn't have that issue whatsoever. It walks right up it. And then you talk about durability. So many modern cars, right, are engineered to survive on the road and then have some off-road capability, but if you're pounding them off-road every single day, you're gonna run into failures. This Land Cruiser was engineered to drive up this logs course time and time again, year in, year out, and do it with confidence. And I mean, it's comfortable too, right? Even though it is solid axle, it's got coil springs, it's got a pretty wide track, drove right up it like it was nothing. So this Land Cruiser, I mean, I love it. It's just amazing. It's got old school tech, it's got compromises. It uses a lot of gas. It's very slow. It's not super safe. It's an old car. Stuff is going to break, even though it is a Land Cruiser. But let's see how the Ineos does on that, granted, mild course. The gentleman just bought this Ineos like last week. We didn't want to bring it into our super hard course because, you know, tons of mud and it's his brand new car. I respect that. So we're gonna bring it through this course and then see how it compares off-road, and then get on the lift and do some engineering analysis. This video is brought to you by Onyx Off-Road, our go-to off-road trail navigation software. You can download maps ahead of time. It integrates into your Apple CarPlay if you want. You know the difficulty, what to expect whenever you go hit the trail. A huge thank you to Onyx for sponsoring this video. All right, everybody, so I'm with Adam, and Adam, you're one of the early retail customers of an Ineos in the US. Congratulations, dude.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
That's really cool. And you were on a 2,000-mile road trip, probably more than that.
It'll be 4, I think, by the time I get home. So it's been 2,000 thus far, just getting here from Seattle.
Driving coast to coast in your new Grenadier, and thank you for coming out to our course here. And what we're gonna do is run this through a couple of different tests, see how it performs as a baseline. And the first test is this trenches course. We got these various kind of holes, and the vehicle's gonna articulate. Adam, you actually had a chance to take this to Moab, Utah on your way out here.
Yeah, oh, so beautiful. It was my first time out there. And we didn't do anything crazy, but just the trails, like even just within the national parks, were fantastic. So highly recommend everyone to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, let's start crawling forward. Now, a little bit behind this company. This is a company based out of the UK that has come out with a 4-wheel drive body-on-frame, solid axle, kind of spiritual successor to the original Defender. And we're going up these trenches course, and you can go as slow as you want. We'll let this vehicle get really articulated here. And we're in 4 high here with the center diff locked. Give it one more little go. Okay, interesting.
Let's take a little roll.
So this is
more momentum.
Just standard 4-wheel drive, and what happens here is typically you're going to get some traction control intervention, but the Ineos is a little resilient to that. But there you go. Nice. Sweet. Oh, fantastic. So that was 4 high center diff locked. So vehicle's fully articulated. You can feel those solid axles working.
Yeah.
And we'll go ahead and we can zoom down back into that same course. We'll try it once again in 4 low with the diffs locked up.
Yeah.
What was interesting there, and I expected a lot more kind of brake bias going on.
Yeah.
It was very open. So maybe when you turn that traction control off with the center diff locked, it is off.
Yeah, it's been curious. I mean, and it'll be interesting if we have a chance to get it on the rollers.
Sure.
But to see sort of what exactly their brake traction control is doing. I've seen the guys testing them in Australia.
Yeah,
and
right.
They've certainly had some good response, but the brake traction control in the Grenadier seems to be still needs a little bit of development, I'd say.
And you know what it could be too, right, is maybe they're taking a super old school approach. So, you know, like in an old Defender that didn't have traction control,
right.
People off-roaded with you know, diffs unlocked and all wheel spinning, and that was just the way you did it until you engaged like a locker. So let me show the folks here what we got going on. So I saw you got your transfer case selector there.
Yep.
And is this just high-low and then lock to the right?
Yeah, so it's just like a Defender. So left and right is to lock the center diff, and then forward and back is high and low. So to get it into low, you've got to be in neutral. You lift up on this collar, and you got to really make sure it's back in there. That it's not in neutral. See, it says transfer case in neutral, even though it seems like it's in lock. So then
that do it that time?
That seems to be in, yeah.
Yep.
Well, if we hear the gears grind, we'll take note of. All right, we made it. So now we're in lock.
And then what about the diff locks? How do those work?
Yep, so we put it in off-road mode before we started. And so we start with the rear diff lock. I think you just press that one time, and it looks like my rear diff is now blinking that it's locking.
Sweet.
That is now locked, and now the front is now locking.
Well, what's cool
about
this I'm noticing is like you only have one central screen, which is everything.
Yep.
But you do have this cool little info panel.
Yeah.
Which kind of breaks it up a little.
I'm sure that's a legal requirement. I'm also probably going to put it into manual select and leave it in second, and see how it goes from there.
Now, with the diffs locked up, what that should mean is we got equal wheel speed left and right. Yeah, I mean, and pretty immediately. It's a pretty noticeable difference. So clearly the diff locks are doing what they're supposed to do.
That was nothing at all.
Sweet. All right.
I think we quadrupled our turning radius.
Now, speaking of turning radius, I know a lot of folks online have been kind of a little on edge about the turning radius. How has that been in your experience?
It's a big turning radius, and I'm taking a wide circle here just because I don't want to go super tight on the lockers.
You can just
might
turn them off. Yeah, why not?
If you disengage the rear, it disengages the front and the rear.
Cool.
So they are disengaging now. And this is the first time I've actually had it double locked, so it'll be interesting. I know there's been some questions around how long it's taking the diffs to unlock. I don't know, they still seem to be locked.
We can also, a lot of the four-wheel drive the drive, if you stop and go into reverse,
all right,
sometimes you can actually unwind them.
Yeah, I'm sure. No, I'm sure there's some.
It's so interesting, like, a lot of the vehicles I test, like especially older Wranglers and Tacomas, they really don't like coming out of the lockers. Other ones are more acceptable to do so. Yeah.
Let's see if this has helped. Oh, we're still in lock. Let's go around the circuit.
And the little lights are flashing. Come on, buddy. There you go.
All right, now they're off.
All right, so it took a hot sec, but they came off. So, Adam, you have owned a huge variety of off-road vehicles over the years, including Land Rover products, including Defender products.
True, yeah.
And we've got a full video over at TFL Car if you want to see kind of his initial impressions on this from the road trip standpoint. But just walk me through, like, how does this vehicle stacking up to some of the vehicles you've owned in the past, like Defenders, like some of the Nissan stuff you've had?
Yeah, I mean, it's a modern vehicle, you know? It's built on modern manufacturing processes, and I think that people underestimate what that means. When you buy a Land Rover Defender, you're buying a vehicle that was manufactured essentially on a manufacturing line that was built in the 50s. And so it's very much that. This is a really, really nice, well-packaged car. There are a lot of comparisons between this and the Defender. Obviously, there are a lot of comparisons between this and the G-Wagon. I think we'll get to a point where it's kind of its own thing, but those are just the reference points we have today. But it's just a modern car.
It feels a lot, from an interior perspective, a lot like what you'd find in the Mercedes G. From an exterior standpoint, it obviously shares a lot of perhaps design inspiration with the some of the older Land Rover products. And then it's got a BMW engine, and we'll go up the left side here.
Okay, great.
So it's got a lot going on from a design and engineering standpoint, and then it's got solid axles, and it's got that low range transfer case, and it's got all of that kind of baked in goodness.
So we're just 4 low and center diff lock.
Yep, and it's got a full-time four-wheel drive with a center diff lock. So there's actually a differential in the middle. Oh yeah. So what are the tire sizes on this guy from the factory? It's like a 32 and a bit, right?
Yeah, I think it's or just under a 32. Maybe it's 31 and a bit.
We'll double check that. Yeah. But you were saying that Eibach makes a lift kit already, so you could fit a true 33 on this vehicle.
Yeah, I think what's great about the process that Ineos went with this is they went with major manufacturers for everything. So
we're gonna head back down, yeah.
Springs, Bilstein shocks, Brembo brakes, like these are all known quantities, whether it's OEM or aftermarket manufacturers, and so I think that has been very nice.
And we'll head up the logs course here, and we'll see how comfy it is. So coil springs as well.
Yeah.
So it's not that old school technology. No. And I have to say, I'm really impressed. You know, a lot of folks were concerned right off the bat with, you know, the BMW powertrain and is it going to have the chops to take off-road? But it feels so incredibly smooth from at least the passenger seat. Nice. We got the BFG KM2 tires on this thing too.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
I went with the 17s just in case because we're at full air.
Right.
We haven't even aired down at all, so we're 50 pounds in the tires, like not an insignificant amount. But I did want to go with the 17 so I could air down a little more than the 18s if I needed to.
Yeah, that's pretty smart. All right, dude, I have to say, I mean, first impression off-road feels really, really cool. Obviously, it's got 2,000 miles on it, so we're not going to bring it into anything. We're going to break your new Grenadier.
Thank you.
But I'm excited to have more opportunities and see what these can do because, like, it's got the stuff.
It's got the mods.
It's got the stuff, yeah. So we'll have to see going forward. Real quick, because if people don't tune in a TFL car, what have been your top 3 favorite things and maybe top 2 dislikes?
Yeah.
After owning this for the last 2,000 miles.
Favorite thing, I love a solid axle, sort of high seated position. Like that, I really love that. I think that the capabilities, the power, the delivery, all of that is very much on point. Things I haven't loved, I don't love the lack of space for stuff around here. I've mitigated that with sort of the seat covers. And the fuel economy is the fuel economy. It's a 6,000 pound car built in the shape of a brick, so it's not going to get great fuel economy. That just is what it is.
What have you been averaging on your trip?
It's been all over the place because of where I've been coming from, Seattle through the Cascades, across the Rockies. A lot of uphill high headwinds at 80, 85 miles an hour. That'll get you 12 and a half.
Right.
Coming down, I think I was getting closer to 14, 15. And I think once I get out into some of the flatland, I should get closer to 17, 18.
Okay, so mid-teens.
Yeah.
Or thereabouts, yeah. With the Land Cruiser on the lift, we can see how this legendary 80 series is engineered and how it compares to the Grenadier. Now, the first thing you notice stepping underneath this vehicle is the complete lack of plastic anywhere. No composites or fibers or any kind of weird stuff like this. Everything is steel. Up front, we've got 2 recovery points, and that's pretty much it. There's no aero protection. There's also not a lot of protection for the radiator, but it really doesn't need it because you got this big cross member connecting both sides of this body on frame construction. Now, as we move back, we have this positively enormous front differential. If you ever wondered why a Land Cruiser will last 250,000 miles, you just got to get one on the lift and take a look at how beefy everything is. This axle tube alone is going on 3.5 inches in height, which is just insane. We have a very simple steering setup. Interestingly enough, a lot of the links are actually pretty small, and I think especially compared to the Ineos, we're going to see a pretty big difference there. We have a very basic steering setup, very durable, and then coming further back here, we've got this really cool lower control arm design. I really like this on this particular Land Cruiser, where you've got your mount here tucked up out of the way, and then you got this kind of little bend and curve, which allows some extra clearance here so you're not getting caught up on stuff. Now, a lot of stuff under here is unprotected. So, for example, like the engine, some of the transmission, it all is pretty unprotected, but it's also so nice and tucked up high out of the way from rocks and scary pointy things. Further back here, we've got a little skid plate over the transfer case, and one thing you really notice is just how narrow this vehicle is. From frame rail to frame rail, we're only looking at 40 inches. It's a super narrow frame design, and the frame height is about 6 inches, and it's a fully boxed frame front to back. Fuel tank here, big and in charge. Of course, chunky skid plate underneath there. The lower control arm mount there, tucked nice and out of the way. Here we have about 1.5 inches diameter on the lower control arm, so that's nice and beefy. Shock mount also not hanging where it's going to get cut up. It's tucked up against that the hub, tucked up against the wheel. And then the rear axle, really overbuilt. They do have the pumpkin right in the center there. It's a multi-piece axle design, and then coil springs on either side with, in this case, the Old Man Emu shocks extending down from both sides, and then there's a full-size spare up back. So look, the Land Cruiser, it's such a simple design underneath here. Nothing is like, ooh, let's take an engineering class on this, because it's basic, reliable, overbuilt engineering, something that you really don't see in a lot of new vehicles. But I'm kind of curious, are we going to see that same philosophy applied to the new Grenadier? So with the Ineos up on the lift, I do want to point some cool stuff out because there's a lot of interesting technology going on. Now let's talk about the obvious. First of all, in the front here, we've got this bash plate. It doesn't extend super far back, but it doesn't have to because this is here to protect the radiator and the fan. And just behind the bash plate, we're going to find the steering linkages, which all look super overbuilt. Even like the steering stabilizer is a really chunky unit, and I want to talk about these axles. So this is a company called Carraro, who is I believe they're Italian, and they're known for doing like agricultural axles for tractors and that kind of thing. And this is a super overbuilt front axle, at least from initial inspection. So like the axle tube I'm looking at here, we're looking at like over a 3-inch diameter axle tube. And then you look at like the ends where the kingpins are. Just everything is so overbuilt, which is a fantastic thing to see. I mean, from a front end standpoint, you've got solid axle, obviously, but you've got your coil springs, your Eibach coil springs. You got your shock absorbers coming out here. It's also tucked up nice and high. So, for example, like shock mounts aren't dragging down low in the front. So I'm really impressed with the front end geometry here. Now you might notice that like the engine oil pan into the plastic trans pan, right? This all looks pretty vulnerable, but we have to consider all of this is tucked up super high. So we've got a lot of distance between this engine and your lowest hanging fruit. And if you do feel worried about it, I'm sure we're going to have companies that are going to come through, kind of, create some extra skid plates. Nice beefy cross member here that connects both sides of this frame. And one thing which I think is really, really smart that Ineos has done is there's actually holes with threads that are pre-installed into the frame, not the body. So if you do want to go to rock rails or side steps, that's going to be pre-set up, ready to go. You don't have to do any tapping, any kind of weird stuff like that. And then we've got the transfer case mounted there. Not a lot of not a lot of protection on the transfer case, but once again, it's tucked up real high. And let's talk about these frame rails. And you look at the height on these frame rails. Look how beefy they are. We're looking like an 8-inch frame rail. I believe it is powder coated, and also perhaps there's like a wax coating underneath, so it all looks very nice and rust protected. And then out back, one of the cool things that Ineos, I do have to say, probably borrowed from Land Rover, is that the differentials are offset. So in a lot of vehicles, like the front pumpkin and the rear pumpkin will be staggered, which means if you clear something on the front, you might not clear it on the back. But in this vehicle, both of the pumpkins are offset to the driver's side. So you know where the lowest point is, and if you can clear it on the driver's side, you're probably going to clear it around both sides. Then we look at like the lower rear control arms here, also looking nice and beefy. It's almost an 1.5 inch radius lower control arm, which is really cool. Then you've got your rear suspension. Once again, sway bar, shock mounts, all of it are tucked up super high, out of the way. Nothing is hanging down low. So this vehicle, I gotta say, I mean, this is really well thought out for off-road adventures. More protection on the skid plate there. The owner of this vehicle is saying, the range is a little compromised, 300 miles maybe on a tank with the fuel economy. Some owners are talking about, maybe expanding the fuel tank at rear to where they have like the DEF tank on the diesel models in the EU. But I gotta say, there's really not a whole lot that's problematic under here. It's really well done. Look, the elephant in the room is that the Grenadier is expensive. That vehicle behind me, $86,000. But there's not a lot of competitors if you want body on frame, solid axle, locking differential, a warranty, and an inline-6 turbocharged engine. The Land Cruiser has gone in a different direction. The Defender has gone in a different direction. And yes, while it may be expensive, I'm so excited what Grenadier and Ineos is doing with this product. And I can't thank Adam enough for bringing his brand new 2,000-mile Grenadier out here to Colorado to let us have a little first look at it. And just a huge thank you to him and a huge thank you to you guys for watching. We'll see you on the next episode.